Hello, I'm Marion Phillips and I'm a Master Gardener with Knox County, a Knox County Master Gardener. I'm going to share today my journey of trying to make my yard more appealing for hummingbirds to attract them to the yard. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the strategies and considerations that will make it easier for you to bring the hummingbirds into your yard. Now, why would you not want a hummingbird in your backyard or front yard? They are the most amazing little critters, the little birds. They're colorful. They zip around from flower to flower. They can dive bomb. They can hover. They can sit. But you know the one thing they cannot do, they cannot walk. Their feet are not made for walking. So we'll talk in a few minutes about perches, but hummingbirds are just incredible birds. And so let's talk about a couple of strategies to get them into your yard. Two main strategies are feeders, and this feeder has the red on it, which a good hummingbird feeder, and they're not expensive, but they must have the red. And the other consideration are blossoms. Flowers that bloom and have nectar in them. All right, let's talk a minute about what makes for a good feeder. The first and foremost is that you keep your feeder clean. You'll notice that this water is very clear, and as John Shuey says, who wrote the Hummingbird Handbook, your water should be as clear as gin. Now, how is that for a good reference to if your water is good for the hummingbirds or not? But he says that the hummingbird water is one, when it goes bad, meaning it becomes cloudy, it can become fermented, or you can get mold around the parts of your hummingbird feeder, that is when you cause potential damage to the hummingbird population. So you want to keep it very, very clean. And I suggest that if you clean out the water every couple of 3 days, then you're doing it quickly enough so that you don't have the mold accumulate, and the cleaning process is quick and easy. And I keep the hummingbird food in my refrigerator and then just replenish it every couple of days. Now, you're probably thinking that you have to go out and buy some hummingbird food. No, you do not want the red coloring dye in your water. So it's easy to do it at home. It's a 4-to-1 ratio. I use a half a cup of sugar and 2 cups of water, and I heat it up in the microwave to get it all mixed well, let it cool down, and put it in, and the remainder I put in the refrigerator, or I could make a bigger batch. But it's a 4-to-1 process. You want to use plain old granulated sugar. You don't want to use artificial sweeteners, honey, molasses. None of these products are good for the hummingbirds, just good granulated sugar that is easily broken down for the hummingbird's system. Now, another thing is spacing. I have one hummingbird feeder here, but I also have one in the back. If you use more than one hummingbird feeder in your yard, you need to make sure that they are spaced and that the hummingbirds here cannot see the other hummingbird feeder, because then you have these territories and you'll get one, and I've done this before. Trust me, I've made all the mistakes. I've had a hummingbird and one little fella, one little hummer, a male, got really aggressive and he kept everybody off both feeders. So you need to space them so they can only be at one feeder at a time and not visually see the other feeder. And I do get hummingbirds in both my front yard and my backyard. The other thing is that hummingbird feeders are a real commitment, and I am going to stress this. John Shuey that I referenced earlier talks about the ethical responsibility of a feeder, and that is if you put one up, you need to commit to keeping that feeder clean, well maintained for the season. If you're not, please take it down and remove it from your yard so that you are not providing a source, because the hummingbirds are going to go to that red. And if they drink water that has mold in it, that has fermented, then there are chances that the hummingbird can become sick from that. The other strategy that I wanted to talk about is that of having flowers in your garden that will attract the hummingbirds to your yard. Now, one of the things that is very, very important is one of the strengths. We're going to talk about 3 strengths of hummingbirds, and one of them is memory. And I can tell you a story about working in my garden in the spring, early in the spring, in March, and the hummingbird literally circling my head. I was working underneath where the feeder had been the previous year. The hummingbird remembered and came back. They remember their food sources. Their lives depend on it. So once you put up a feeder and keep it maintained, you're going to have hummingbirds coming back year after year to that feeder. Their memory is phenomenal when it comes to that, and their lives depend on it. So the next one is visual. They have very strong visual acuity, and they see flowers on they see colors on the ultraviolet spectrum that we don't always see. So the more colors that you provide, and as you look around what I have here, you will see that I have red salvias, I have Victoria blues, I have purples, I have some whites, yellows. I've tried more red. I had bee balm, it's already bloomed out, that's very vibrant red. But what I want you to think about is if a hummingbird is seeing the vibrant colors, then he's going to be attracted to your yard. Not all of these flowers are the best for hummingbirds, but it gets them into the area. Some of them don't have as much nectar or have the tubular flowers. So imagine this area, this small area here up above. A hummingbird is flying over, and these colors are going to attract him to this yard. Now, whether he stays around, there may be other sources that are better than mine, but he's going to notice my yard. And so that's what I've built, that's what I'm building here, is something that up above visually is going to pull the hummingbirds in. And then I have the feeder there for them also. The next thing, you've got the memory of the hummingbird, you've got their visual acuity, which is very, very accurate and strong. Then they've got the taste. And by the way, hummingbirds do not smell. Now, don't you find that rather interesting, that they do not smell? They're hummingbirds. They love flowers with the sweet nectar in them. Surely they can smell, but they can't. So visual strength is primo for these little critters to come in and find your garden. Now, once they get there, they want to taste some high content flower blossoms with a lot of sugar because they need it. They need the energy. And over the years, and this was one of the facts that as I was doing some research, I discovered that not only do hummingbirds have taste receptor glands, their savory receptor glands have migrated or mutated over the years so that they, instead of the savory taste, they pick up more sweet. So not only are their sweet receptor glands picking up the sweet taste, the savory receptor glands are also picking up sweet taste. So they are looking for the sugar. So what I have to provide for them, and what you can do in your yard, is have bright colored flowers that have a lot of nectar in them. The long tubular blossom is their favorite because bees and all can't get in there as easily, and they can put their little bill into the long tubular shaped blossom. So you're going to see them flying all around your garden. They're going to be looking for blossoms that have high sugar content. They're looking for that tubular shape. It's easier for them to get out, and they like larger blossoms. Now, I will show you in this garden, like the catmint has a small, the butterfly bush is a small blossom. I have a lot of lantana that I love because the hummingbirds and the butterflies love it later in the year. But I also have some salvia with the deeper throat and the Victoria Blue has a deeper throat on it. The bee balm, which is bloomed out, has a wonderful deep blossom with a tubular shape that they love also. This is a little plant, Crosscosmia, that I love. It's already bloomed out, but it has the long red, vivid red blossom, and they adore it. I have several pictures where the hummingbirds are, their little heads all the way inside the blossom. They love it. So we're going to take a break right now and then walk to the back and look at some more flowers. There are other considerations when planning for hummingbirds to come to your garden, and one of them is we've talked about flowers, blossoms, the sugar water that's critical for them, the sugar water that provides salts, nutrients, oils, protein. They also need protein. They cannot live on just sugar. And so in your garden, and this is plug for all natives, which is my desire, but it is not where I am right now. I'm working gradually there, but natives pull in spiders, little flies, mosquitoes, white flies. All of these are protein for the hummingbirds, and they love it, and they have to have it. So not only are they coming to your flowers to get the sugar water or your feeder, they're also catching, usually flying through the air, catching flying insects, or plucking. They've been seen to be plucking spiders out of the webs. So those are the two things that they have to have in order to have a nice balanced life. Another thing that I like to have are perches for them. One of the reasons that the fence is here, and I have they will perch on the fence, because remember I said they don't walk, but they can perch, and their little feet will grab hold, and they need time to rest. They also will take a branch from a tree. This is one of the biggest perches I have. They will sit up in the tree and guard the feeder, or come back to the feeder as they need more sugar water. So perches are important. I have taken a wire, a thin wire, and just connected it between two of the pillars, and they will sit on that. It allows them to have a resting place. They need that. They also need water, and you can hear some water in my yard. I have a little water feature. That is not for the hummingbirds. The water is too powerful for them. They love misters or your sprinklers. If you have a sprinkling system, you might catch them in that hits. I've had a sprinkler hit a tree, and the hummingbird would be in the tree bathing on the leaves of the tree in the water. So they need a water source, but they're kind of specific about what kind of water source they need. Because remember, the hummingbird is very, very small. And we're talking about, and I didn't mention this earlier, but we're talking about the ruby-throated hummingbird, because that is basically the only hummingbird you're going to see in our part of the country. From the Gulf Coast up to Canada, and from the Mississippi River all the way to the eastern seaboard, that is ruby-throated hummingbird territory. That is the migration area. So all the stuff that I am telling you about really applies basically to the ruby-throated hummingbird, because that's what you're going to see. If you see another one in our area, it is an anomaly, usually a hummingbird that has been blown off their migration route. So let's talk a little bit more now about, and the last thing I wanted to add is that they need a safe environment. And if you'll look around, trees, shrubs, provide them a place to hide and to do that resting that we talked about, and to have a place for sleeping at night. And so we have a lot of it here. They do make nests, I have no idea where the nests are. I've never found a nest, and I would love to see one, but if I do, it is prohibited to cut or take them down in any way because they're protected. Now, let's talk about seasonal planting and seasonal flowers so that you can have them in your yard year-round. First thing I want to say is, if your yard is small, you don't want to fool with flowers, that's okay, because you can put up a feeder and a hanging basket that has petunias, calabrochia, any blooming flower, and you can get the baskets early in the spring when the hummingbirds are coming through and enjoy them all summer long with just baskets and potted plants on your porch. One of the biggest attractors is the red buckeye tree, and a lot of people have told me that they watch the red blossoms on the buckeye tree in the spring to know when the hummingbirds are back, because it is such an attractive, eye-catching tree that really does, once again, visually pull in the hummingbirds. There are a lot of other plants, and I'm just going to list a few of them. Flowering quince, wisteria, Carolina jasmine, corbel or heuchera, columbine. Columbine is a wonderful plant that has a high sugar content in their blossoms also. Petunias, calabrochia, bleeding heart, fuchsia, salvias of all kinds. And I want to make the comment here, I have put out plants in the spring like the bright red salvia, and because I want to pull them in early in the spring. Well, the frost has more than once had a different plan for me and killed my salvia or some other annuals that I've put in that I knew the hummingbirds would like. So, you know, there's always that balancing act of how early can you start pulling them in the spring, and that provides an argument for planting perennials that are not affected as much by the late frost that we have in East Tennessee. Now in the summertime, there's so many different flowers that you can have. Butterfly bush, chase tree, croscosmia. There's autumn sage, all kinds of sages, pineapple sage, I have those. You're seeing the Shasta daisy, that's not a really good example for hummingbirds, but it is a good pollinator. I have shrimp plant, I have petunias, I have impatiens, just all kinds of plants are out there. All you have to do is Google and you will find a list. One of the plants I do want to mention, though, that is not a well-known plant, but this is society garlic. It has a beautiful long tubular shape. It's purple, and it is a hummingbird magnet. They really do like this, and this is one of the easiest plants to grow. It just blooms its little heart out. Doesn't matter if you water it or not, it just keeps its little head up. The more sun you give it, the more it loves. Now I have on the fence one of my favorite, and it's the hyacinth bean. And the hyacinth bean is, I've grown from seed, so it's just now beginning to blossom, putting out its blossoms, and it will have purple blossoms from now until frost. It is a bloom that, once again, is tubular in shape. The hummingbirds love it. They'll sit on the fence and they'll dive into here and eat their little hearts out, sucking up the sugar from the blossoms. So now let's talk about moving on into the fall. I've got the hyacinth bean. I have black and blue salvia over here that is, it's very hard to see the blossoms, but once again it's a salvia that has a long tubular. It blooms till frost. I have some Joe pine coming up. I have the red hot poker, which is a tubular one. So I have some things, and I have bee balm, and that bee balm is a little better off than the stuff in front, but it is playing out also. So trying to have something here that as the birds are migrating back from up north down to the South or Central America, will be able to stop and fuel themselves as they move on. So it's quite a journey that I'm on, and like I said, I am not proficient at this. I am not an expert. I'm just giving you some lessons that I've learned and done a little research to give you some facts. I hope you've enjoyed it. I am also want to recommend the Hummingbird Handbook by John Shuey, and another book, The Ruby-Throated Hummingbird by June Osborne. So if you start doing just a little checking around, doing a little reading, you'll get as excited as I am about this hummingbird, which once you understand the strengths and the requirements, it's very easy to pull it into your yard also. So go and bring these beautiful flying jewels of the air into your yard. Thank you.